Good evening. Calling to order tonight's meeting of the City of Santa Cruz Planning Commission. It is the regular meeting of November 21st, 2024. Welcome. For starters, let's have a roll call.
Commissioner Dan?
Here.
Gordon? Here. Kennedy?
Here.
McKelvey?
Here.
Alhamis?
Here.
Thompson? Or Conway?
Here. Do we have any statements of disqualification this evening?
It's from me.
Thanks.
Okay, seeing none. We will move on to oral communications. There are no members of the public here tonight, but this would be the time to, for members of the public to address the commission for items not on the agenda. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of November 7th, 2024. Any discussion about the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve. Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. And any abstentions?
I just wasn't here.
That's okay.
It doesn't matter, right? Aye.
Okay. Item number 2 is a public hearing. The Planning Commission is again holding a public hearing on the accessory dwelling unit code. This public hearing is to review and make a recommendation on amending Santa Cruz Municipal Code Chapters 21, 23, and 24. Be adding a new section 24.16.165 to maintain consistency with state regulations for accessory dwelling units, remove owner occupancy requirements for all accessory dwelling units, and to allow for the condominium mapping and separate sale of accessory dwelling units and their associated primary dwellings. Amendments to sections of Chapter 24 are part of the local coastal program implementation plan and will require approval by the California Coastal Commission prior to taking effect inside the coastal zone. This project qualifies as exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3 as a project that with certainty does not have an effect on the environment, and section 15183 as a project consistent with the general plan for which an EIR was certified. And with that, do we have a staff recommendation?
Sure.
A staff presentation?
Thank you, Tess. Good evening, commissioners. And thank you for the introduction. So I'm going to skip to the next slide. So our new follow-up amendments to our ADU regulations include 3 different things. I know we were just here in September, now we're back. So there were 2, first of all, there were 2 new state laws that were approved in September that affect ADUs and affect our regulations that we need to change. That's SB 1211 and AB 2533. Second, we have a new process between the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, and the California Coastal Commission. They have collaborated on this process that when we have an ordinance that affects ADU regulations, and that is a part of our local coastal program, or our LCP, HCD will do a preliminary review of that draft ordinance prior to it being approved by City Council and submitted to the Coastal Commission for approval. So they did this for the ordinance that was recently approved by City Council, and they had a few comments. And so this ordinance package includes several changes in response to those comments. Also, if there are any members of the public watching tonight, you would see in our amendments proposed owner occupancy and ADU separate sale amendments. We're not seeking commission feedback on those tonight, as those are already presented in the same form in September, and we already received that feedback from the Planning Commission at that time. There's also a few minor changes that we've made to the draft ordinance since it was published for the Planning Commission, and so I want to go over those very briefly. First, we've added in a parking requirement for junior ADUs, and that is to clarify that there is no parking requirement for junior ADUs. Second is a minor change to the language at the start of section 24.16.141. And that is to clarify that statewide exemption ADUs are not required to meet the development standards in that section or for any zone district development standards. We had received a comment letter from the California Housing Defense Fund that indicated that the language there was a bit confusing. And we worked with them and confirmed that we've very slightly modified the language that will provide the clarity that they're looking for. And then third is an amendment to the city's energy reach code in chapter 1815 of the municipal code for new construction. And that was the reach code that we created last year. This amendment will provide an exemption for statewide exemption ADUs from those reach code requirements. So none of these three minor changes involve any policy questions. They're just included strictly to communicate the requirements under state law. Okay, so very briefly going to talk about SB 1211. So this makes three changes that affect our ordinance. Well, actually just two, but it makes three changes. So the first is the number of detached ADUs that can be constructed on sites with existing multifamily buildings. Under existing law, up to 2 ADUs can be constructed. The new change is that now up to 8 ADUs can be constructed, but no more than the number of units in the building. So for example, if you have a building with 4 units in it, you can construct up to 4 detached statewide exemption ADUs. If you have a building with 20 units in it, you can build up to 8. The second is for statewide exemption ADUs. Existing law would allow us to require objective standards to be applied to those units as long as it doesn't preclude the creation of those units. The new change is that we can no longer apply any objective standards beyond those specified in Government Code Section 66323, and those are very narrow. They relate to height, setbacks, and the size of the unit. And then third, there's a change to what can be required for parking. The state law now says that we cannot require the replacement of any spaces that are removed to construct an ADU. Our ordinance already provides for this, so there is no change proposed. Okay, moving on to AB 2533. This is about legalization of unpermitted ADUs. So state law already restricts what the city, what reasons the city can use to deny a permit to legalize an unpermitted ADU. And AB 2533 makes that even stricter. So now the only reasons that the city could disapprove such an ADU is if it meets one of the criteria for a substandard dwelling that is spelled out in Health and Safety Code Section 17920.3. This new law also expands protection to include unpermitted JADUs, and it also changes the date. So under current law, it affects any unpermitted ADUs constructed prior to 2018, and now that date has been moved up to 2020. Okay, so that's basically the gist of the changes. So in terms of next steps, tonight, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council. Over the next few weeks, HCD will review our draft ordinance that contains the municipal code sections that are also part of the LCP, and they may provide feedback on that. On December 10th, we are taking our ordinances to the City Council for a first reading. We will also be bringing an urgency ordinance to make the changes related to those 2 state laws that I just described, because they are going into effect January 1st, and we need to have our ordinance updated by then in order to keep it valid in the eyes of the state. January 14th, would be potentially a second reading for the city council if they approve the first reading on December 10th. And then later on in 2025, the LCP amending ordinance would go to Coastal Commission for approval and then would be in effect in the coastal zone. So finally, for the recommendation, this is the recommendation in the staff report with the exception of the two highlighted additions. Number 3 is those two minor changes that I mentioned earlier. I did not include the energy code change because that is not something that the Planning Commission needs to make a recommendation on, although you can if you want to. And then also including in the recommendation to approve any additional amendments that may be needed based on feedback that we will get from HCD in the coming weeks to keep the ordinance consistent with state law. So this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do any commissioners have questions of staff?
I just had, out of curiosity, how many ADUs are being approved in the city on an annual basis recently? Just generally.
It's about 100 now, a little less.
Per year?
Yep.
Okay.
Typically, I think in the last year or so, it's been around 80 to 90, and now I think this year we're expected to have, about 120 applications in.
Okay.
Not all those get approved, but
Okay,
so it's nearing 100 now.
thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions of, I have one. And this is about the, for many years, legalizing ADUs was a real challenge because they were required to meet the building code, current building code, no matter if they even were built one in the beginning. And I know that that's lightened up. But I'm interested in what is required for legalizing existing ADUs. That I know it refers specifically to the health and safety code, but a little more information about that. I know they're not going to be required to be sprinkled. Are they going to have to be required? I mean, like we would have, we had to tear apart walls to see if they would meet, and so what is required?
Well, they have to submit for a building permit application. And my understanding is kind of the biggest hurdle is that many of these ADUs are like converted from a non-habitable structure like a garage. And so the intended or permitted use is not habitable, and that would fall under one of those health link safety code sections. So basically what they would need to show in their building permit plans is how that space has been upgraded to now become habitable and to meet all the criteria so that it basically doesn't meet any of those substandard criteria.
So it has to be habitable, but if it's, let's say someone converted a garage and, they put in insulation, they put in sheetrock, it wasn't inspected that way. The electrical is going to have been put in, who knows when. Will they be required to upgrade? Or do we just not know that? Is it going to be, it's so case by case?
It is case by case. They would need to show what they have on their plans. And then as long as what they have doesn't have any habitability issues, then it would be approved.
Okay.
But if they have, if their electrical was done in some weird wonky way that creates an issue, then that is something that they may need to upgrade.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's habitable is just, it can be quite a wide, I hope that it enables existing ADUs to become permitted and make important safety improvements without, completely, I know that we've eliminated any chance of them ever being legalized. So I hope this is meeting a middle ground, which isn't that easy to do. So. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Commissioner Kennedy?
So if we don't we'll get it done, but if we didn't, what would happen? Would our whole ADU ordinance like be unenforceable, like the objective standards, or?
If we didn't approve this,
I'm not saying I want to, but just as a hypothetical
yeah,
exercise.
so there is a section in the state law that says, for that whole part of the state law that governs ADUs, it says if our ordinance is not consistent with that, then it's considered null and void.
Okay.
So now that there's changes coming to that body of that law, we have to make sure that we are consistent with it when it goes into effect.
Okay. I had a momentary celebration of like parking going totally away, like that happened in 10 years. That's incredible. This is kind of the end of all that. And then we don't need to make a recommendation, but that exception for the REACH code is really good. ADUs are very small and they get very weird for energy code purposes. So I think that's a good thing.
Okay, good. So tonight's meeting is a public hearing. There are no members of the public here this evening, but so I'm acknowledging that the public hearing was opened and closed. And we can proceed. Anybody is interested in making a motion?
I will move to approve.
I will second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please? All those in favor, or no, one by one, sorry. Make up your mind.
Commissioner Dan,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
McKelvey,
Yes.
Alhamis,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Chair Conway.
Yes. Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing this back several times. I know it's been a little bit bouncy. Moving on to information items, and I do have one tonight. The Public Works Commission set up a subcommittee. They were interested in identifying ways to effectively provide feedback on projects and policy as they come forward. And a couple of weeks, I met with one of the members of that subcommittee, Sue Gilchrist, to discuss the roles that our commissions play in advising the city council on projects and policy. And I thought it's good to be aware of how feedback happens. And it really happens through applications, and staff reports. So for us, if, items go to other commissions, that's always part of the staff report that comes here. And I know we've always found it particularly interesting if Public Works or if the Historic Preservation Commission, that's always part of our conversation. So mostly what we talked about is that this is a really important time to hone in on objective standards as the place to provide guidance. And this is the tool that the city has to guide projects, and particularly between different bodies. So for instance, they'll review something like traffic calming. The way to provide that feedback is through defining criteria, defining the tools to create some traffic calming strategies. And then finally, we're almost 2 years into objective standard implementation, and a review is underway. And coming forward early in the next year, that will go to a number of commissions, including Public Works and the Planning Commission, and that's going to be an important time to provide feedback. So I just wanted to let you all know that conversation happened, and our fellow commissioners are, working hard on these pieces. Okay, and then moving on to subcommittee oral reports, and we have one of those as well. So we have a design review subcommittee that has met twice. The subcommittee is focused on developing a set of guidelines to support architectural review committees in their work, evaluating future project proposals that choose to take advantage of the city's downtown density bonus, which is being proposed as part of the downtown plan expansion. This guidance will help a panel of outside architects understand the design features that are most important in Santa Cruz's downtown, allowing them to focus their critique on the most relevant features of a development proposal. So that subcommittee has met twice. I am personally really happy to have some tools available for design review, and the whole commission will be seeing that, when it comes forward as part of the package. And that's that. And then, moving on, items referred to future agendas, and then also any updates. Did I skip by that? I don't see it on here. Do we have any updates on future meetings, Matt?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks, commissioners. Last night, there was a community meeting for 831 Water.
Was there over? Ooh,
What was that?
I watched it.
There was a number of comments made: height, shadows, traffic, parking, bike lanes, driveway entrance, architecture, et cetera. A lot of the usual suspects, but a lot of comments received. And that's anticipated to go to Planning Commission on December 19th. Then council, recap of the meeting a few days ago on Tuesday, because we just had one single council meeting this month, and so it was just a couple days ago. The energy efficient renovations ordinance was passed, and it did include several edits made based on planning commissioner feedback. So thank you all for hearing that and providing such detailed and thoughtful comments on that item. Definitely helpful to go through that process and made council smoother as well. So thank you all.
Did council make any big changes or? Cool.
No.
Right.
The Woodhouse Brewing appeal also went to council on Tuesday, and that appeal was denied. And then a few other items too. There was an item brought by council to proceed with the homeless garden project, so that is moving forward again. The parties have come to an agreement on that path forward, so I expect we'll see an application at some point for that project soon.
Sweet. It's
And then-
Swanton out where it is now, generally.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great news.
And then one final item too that is pretty exciting in our realm and kind of relates back to when our transportation manager, Matt Starkey, came and presented about transportation and funding. Public Works had an item that went to council for a grant application for analysis of revisions to how we apply transportation impact fees in the city. So Public Works will be looking at, what that distribution is and, how we could possibly fund multimodal objectives better. So that'll be exciting work
That's
coming
exciting.
That's
forward.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
It's
is.
always been like, don't talk to us, we'll do
Yeah.
gutters and stuff.
So still early. We're gonna have a, consultant come on board at some point and look at this more, but yeah, exciting.
Okay.
And then just a few items going to council on December 10th that I'd like to mention. This item, the ADUs are going back along with the owner occupancy and the for sale of ADUs will be all going to council then. As well as one more item to highlight is the rescinding the approval of 190 West Cliff. And that has to do with, it was approved by council. It subsequently has been tied up in a lawsuit. And during that time, the project is not feasible and the developer no longer wishes to move ahead with the project. But in order to remove the lawsuit, they need to rescind the approval.
Oh, interesting.
So
This
that's,
is the Dreamin'
that's
parking lot?
as short as I can make that explanation to you all. But,
Wow.
so it's, yeah.
That's the one at Bay
Wow,
and
yeah.
West Cliff.
Yeah,
like 6
Bay and
years ago.
Westcliff, yeah, long time ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
And then
Didn't pan out, apparently.
one final note, the holidays are fast approaching and 2025 is upon us. There will not be a planning commission meeting on January 2nd. We're not going to subject you all to that. The city and planning still closed that day. However, we do have a few projects in the pipeline.
Okay.
And we don't know exactly where they're going to fall yet in January. It could be a special meeting on January 9th, depending on project timing.
Okay.
Ideally, those fall on the normal schedule on the 16th, but I'll keep you posted on that.
And when are new commissioners appointed at the first council meeting?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah,
Here?
we received the applications. I think it's the first meeting.
Okay, I can't quite remember the rhythm of that if we don't have a meeting on the first one, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. Okay? Is that it?
Thank you. Yep, that concludes my updates.
A quick question on the homeless garden project going forward. What kind of planning review, development review will they have in the short run?
Thankfully, Clara's here. She
Okay,
can
I
speak
was
to
gonna
that better
say.
than I can.
I know if you-
Yeah, they will need a general plan designation change for that portion of the site to agriculture, and then also a zoning designation change. And then those will need to go to the Coastal Commission for certification, because that site has not been certified into the LCP yet. And then once that is done, we can process a coastal permit and a design permit for the structures that they want to build associated with that gardening.
Okay, so there would be a design permit review for new buildings. And would that be done as kind of globally for the site? Are they planning to do a master plan for buildings that they will build over time?
Not that I know of. I think their plan is to keep it fairly simple.
Okay.
And have a couple of like agriculture related, like a barn or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that, and for all of your work on that. And with that, tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the swag.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah,
nice.
thank you. Yeah, thank Tess and our admin team. They
Thank you, Tess.
And it was all Vivian.
I love swag.
Felt you all needed.